Kobe Bryant's signature line was one of the most beloved signature lines the sneaker world had ever seen. And I recently ranked the top 8 best Kobe's of all time. But what about the bad ones? My name is Rahman, and these are the 5 absolute worst Kobe Bryant sneakers. Starting off the list at number 5, we have the Nike Kobe 7. Now I know what you guys are thinking. Didn't I just put the Kobe 7 on the best Kobe's ever list? Yeah, I did, because in my opinion, these are one of the best looking Kobe's of all time, and also one of the most collectible, because Nike gave us some of the best colorways that we saw throughout the entire signature series. I mean, just look at how many colorways I got. I got these cheetahs, which are awesome. I got these invisibility cloaks, which are super underrated, because depending on how the light hits the upper, it actually can change color. These are one of my favorites. I got the All-Star Galaxies, which the outsole glows in the dark. I got the What the Kobe's, which were absolutely crazy. And of course, my personal favorite, the Sharks. But these are just some of the awesome colorways that Nike dropped. There's still a lot out there that I wasn't able to cop. But remember, guys, sneakers are kind of like women. Looks are pretty good, but they're not everything. These were just an absolute pain to play in, because they had this removable inner booty, which was really tense. This material right here would just kind of suffocate your foot, and the upper basically had no ventilation whatsoever. So these two things kind of combined to make a really restrictive and hot experience, since all that sweat would just kind of build up because it had nowhere to go. And then you had these materials kind of rubbing your foot in all kinds of weird ways. So that would lead to things like blisters that I know myself, as well as many others who played in these, kind of reported. So even though the Kobe 7 is one of the better looking Kobe's visually, at the same time, they're also one of the worst performing Kobe's in the entire line. And since performance is a defining feature of Kobe's signature line, I just felt like these definitely deserve the spot on this list. The Kobe 7 also helped usher in a new price range for Kobe's, with a steep $180 price tag for the Kobe 7 system, which included both the Play Fast and Play Strong insoles. So not only were these an absolute pain to play in, but they were expensive as well, which was a total gut punch, since you were basically paying a premium price to essentially tear up your feet. But I guess I like to punish myself, because I bought like 15 pairs of these.
Really?
Next up at number 4, we have the Kobe AD mids. So these aren't necessarily a bad sneaker, but at the same time, they're not that good either. And when I think about all the Kobe Bryant signature silhouettes, these are by far, hands down, the most bland, the least inspired. And to me, they feel like they belong more in Kobe's budget Mamba mentality line rather than his signature one. When these were announced in the summer of 2017, a lot of fans were thrown off by them, because they were a mid-top cut, and that was something that we hadn't really seen in the Kobe line since the 3s, unless of course you count the 9s, but those were more of a super high top, and even those had a low top version of them. But with the AD mids, they just felt completely out of character from what we came to expect from a Kobe sneaker. But all of that could have been forgiven had Nike come out with a top tier performance experience. But as it turns out, the performance of the AD mid was just as uninspired as its visual design. Nike launched these with the Mamba Mentality Pack, which had 5 colorways, all with really cool names and stories, but honestly, they were just 5 monochromatic colorways, and the releases that followed, again, they weren't bad, but they were just kind of routine and not as creative as we came to expect. And the performance of the AD mid was more of the same story. Not terrible, but not even that good. Call me spoiled if you want, but I just feel like the Kobe line did not reach the high heights that it did with models like these. These are about as bland as you can get, so I feel like these were one of the most disappointing Kobe's ever, and that's why I put them on this list. But I really want to hear what you guys have to think about this sneaker, so go ahead and drop a comment with your 5 worst Kobe's of all time, and let's see how many of us put these on their list. Oh, and the material quality on these was absolutely terrible. My pair got absolutely destroyed. It looks like I hooped outdoors with these, but I didn't. All of this is from indoor use. Next up at number 3, we have the Kobe 2 from Adidas. So I know I've only been using Kobe's Nike silhouettes when I'm making these lists, but when it comes to the worst Kobe sneakers of all time, the Kobe 2 from Adidas not only deserves a spot on this list, but also deserves a spot on the weirdest sneakers ever list. The Kobe 2 was originally released at the height of the Frobe era in 2001, but it wasn't all that different from its predecessor, with really the only differences being minor changes to the silhouette, as well as the shroud covering the lacing system. The upper was made up of a really weird synthetic material that in some colorways gave the Kobe 2 a really unique brushed metal look, which fell right in line perfectly with its design inspiration, which apparently was one of Kobe's Audi cars. In fact, the Kobe 2 street name was Audis for your feet because, well, they look like Audis on your feet. Look, don't get me wrong, I don't want to be misquoted here. I was a fan of the Kobe 2. Adidas had a really cool ad campaign behind it with some really awesome commercials. Kobe was one of the coolest players in the league, so at 9 years old, I just wanted to wear whatever Kobe was wearing. I mean, look at me, guys. Lil Rahman is ready to hit the court in his Kobe 2s, and at that time, I thought I looked absolutely sick, because I did look absolutely sick. Now, while I definitely have some nostalgia for this silhouette, I also recognize the bizarreness of them. I mean, visually, they have not aged well at all. And they actually haven't been retroed as opposed to the Kobe 1, which was re-released a number of times under a different name. And the performance of the Kobe 2 was also a negative since it was clunky and also extremely hot since that upper virtually has no ventilation whatsoever. There were even rumors that Kobe himself was disappointed in them, which makes sense because these were the last sneaker Kobe and Adidas released together, with the Kobe 3 being designed but never ended up seeing a retail shelf. Now, on a side note, I think what would have been the Kobe 3 looks absolutely sick. But as for the Kobe 2, well, these just hold a soft spot in my heart, especially since Kobe wore a special Stars and Stripes colorway after 9/11, which I actually got a custom of myself, although it is on the Kobe 1 as opposed to the Kobe 2. So yeah, the Kobe 2, it's a weird sneaker and I'll be the first one to admit it. Coming in as our runner-up, we have the Nike Kobe 2. So the Kobe 2 is one of those sneakers that you don't see very often, probably because only a select few actually care about them. It's kind of like Return of the Jedi. Most fans prefer Empire or A New Hope, but there's always that one person in the room that thinks Jedi is the best Star Wars movie, when it's not. The Kobe 2 originally released in 2006 and was actually the first time we saw different variations of a Kobe signature silhouette with 3 different versions. There was the Light, which was a torn down version to decrease the weight, the Strength or ST, which had an additional strap for added support, and lastly, the regular or Ultimate version, which was the one that you probably recognized the most since it was the most popular out of the 3. Now, to their credit, this system was way ahead of its time. It wasn't until 5 silhouettes later with the Kobe 7 that we saw Nike go back to this idea of providing different versions of the same silhouette with all slight changes in performance features, which would cater to different playstyles and provide a unique experience. Now, in terms of performance, Nike did equip the 2s with some interesting features, such as the Nike Free outsole, which was all the rage during that time. But on the Kobe 2, the Nike Free tech wasn't as flexible as some of the other silhouettes that featured the same technology. So while it did offer some added flexibility and control, the midsole was stiff, which worked against the free tech, making it more of a marketing gimmick than a performance benefit. The cushioning of the Kobe 2 changed depending on what version you got, with the ST having max air in the heel alongside a zoom bag in the forefoot, while the Ultimate and Light version stuck with a zoom setup, but was widely considered a step back from its predecessor, the Zoom Kobe 1, in terms of feel underfoot. I actually think the Kobe 2 was a step back in pretty much every way. The performance, the visuals, the release. I mean, the Kobe 1 was the better shoe both on and off the court. So while these were ahead of its time, I mean, have you seen anybody rock these? Yeah, me neither. Finally, at number 1 is the worst Kobe sneaker of all time. We have the Nike Kobe AD. All right, so straight up, this sneaker. The Kobe AD was the first sneaker that Nike released post Kobe's retirement, and when he walked away from the game, fans were wondering how Nike was going to move forward with Kobe's signature line, and what we got was the Kobe AD. Right off the bat, we were all trying to figure out what exactly AD meant. Nike was kind of being ominous about it, and we all kind of assumed that it meant after death since Kobe kind of retired, but it actually ended up meaning ANNO DOMINI, which directly translates into the year of our Lord, which honestly is really weird, but I think it was meant to kind of be like a second coming of Kobe's like signature line. Either way, it's a really weird choice of marketing and branding. But again, all of that would have been forgiven if the Kobe AD both looked and played good. And in the end, they looked good. I mean, this is a good looking sneaker, but the performance was not good. In fact, it was outright unacceptable in my opinion. First of all, the traction pretty much sucked because the outsole on my pair started to rip off from the midsole, which is extremely dangerous and downright inappropriate for a shoe that costs $160. And the materials were also disappointing with a textile mesh upper that took absolutely forever to break in. It wasn't breathable, and it pretty much was a downgrade from the Flyknit uppers that we were getting in models before. Now, if that wasn't enough to scare you away from these, the cushioning on the ADs was absolutely horrid. Nike gives us what they called an exposed lunar lawn midsole with zoom air in the heel, which honestly on paper sounds good, but in practice, Nike royally screwed this one up because that exposed lunar was actually caged with this translucent rubber on the midsole, which basically didn't allow that lunar foam to kind of compress, expand, and took away all of the features that lunar was known for. And as for the zoom in the heel, I honestly couldn't notice it at all. You could have told me that these had rocks underneath my feet and I would have totally believed you. I mean, this cushioning was rock hard and it was so bad that I actually suffered a heel bruise while playing in these. And if you ever had a heel bruise, you know how absolutely painful it is. You basically can't walk around on your heel and you have to tiptoe around like an idiot. So I was looking like a complete fool just because I was playing basketball in these. So when the shoe not only sucks, but it hurts you and injures you, that's a huge problem. So to recap, the traction was dangerous, the materials were uncomfortable, and the cushioning was insufferable, easily making these not just the worst Kobe ever, but the worst sneaker that I've ever played basketball in, which was a real shame because I gotta be honest with you guys, when I first saw this sneaker, I thought they looked absolutely killer. So I cannot express to you guys the level of disappointment and betrayal I felt with this silhouette. I mean, Kobe's were always known for mixing aesthetics with top tier performance seamlessly. So this gives me no other choice but to officially disown these as a Kobe sneaker due to the lack of innovation, inspiration, and insulting insinuation that Kobe fans would be happy with whatever Nike put out. These are easily the worst Kobe sneakers of all time, and I didn't even think twice about it. But there you guys have it. Those were the worst Kobe's of all time. Don't get me wrong, guys. I love the Kobe Bryant signature line, but I thought it would be fun to kind of relive the mishaps of the signature series. So if you enjoyed this video, hit that thumbs up button and subscribe to the channel for more sneaker related content just like this. My name's Jaren. It's been great having you. I'll catch you guys in the next one. Peace.